Welcome into episode 252 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR podcast network. Sources Say is, as always, brought to you by our good friends at Justice Dental. Visit one of their two Lexington locations. It's on Blazer Parkway and Wellington Way by scheduling an appointment online at justicedental.com or by calling 859-543-0700. You can even send a text message to one of their friendly team members at the same number to ask a question or make an appointment. Now is a great time to schedule your dental cleaning. Dr. Thompson, Dr. Justice, and their team strive to provide you with good oral health and a comfortable environment. The Justice Dental team looks forward to seeing you soon. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio, joined by Zack Geoghegan of Kentucky Sports Radio. Once again, very excited to have you here. Unfortunately, on bad circumstances and an unfortunate situation for Kentucky basketball that unfortunately is not a surprise. We've been talking about this for weeks now on the show, that this was a very real possibility. Zack Geoghegan, Ugonna Onyenso has hit the transfer portal. Welcome to the show. I'm sorry that it's not under better circumstances.
Yeah, definitely hit to what everyone was hoping for next season. We'll obviously dive into it here in a second, but I'm of the opinion that I don't think it's nearly as big of a deal as maybe some might make it out to be. Obviously, the handler situation and how it kind of all went down is definitely going to leave a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths, especially with how the whole Shaden Sharp thing played out last year. And it feels like that's now 2 years in a row where the exact same thing has happened. So, a lot to talk about there. I will also note that I'm running as producer here today, as Jack knows. So I've got. We're not going to have any of these fancy logo graphics and stuff that Steven was all doing, because I don't know how to do all that stuff, and I don't know how to do it while I'm also talking to you. So as much as I can do here is I can just make myself big, or I can make Jack big, or if I want to put someone's baseball season. Look, talking about baseball, sure, we'll throw baseball comments on here. We can do all that stuff today. So, who are the handlers? I'd like to know their names, wouldn't we all? We'd like to all go find them and hunt them down. But I'll mess with all that stuff while we're going through this. But Jack, obviously losing Ugonna, not ideal for Kentucky. I'll let you take it away.
So it's been very complicated, as I've said on this show, hinted on the show, tried to insinuate that it's very complicated. Ugonna, from the beginning, wanted to be back at Kentucky, and if it were his decision, he would have been back at Kentucky, not even thought twice about it. There's a reason why in the locker room in Greensboro, both times before the game and after the game, he addressed with reporters saying, I'm going to be back next year. I'm excited to replace Oscar Tshiebwe, Jacob Toppin. I know this is going to be my team and my front court. I'm excited to fill that void that's going to be clearly left with those guys leaving. It sounded great on the surface, but that was never the reality, because this was never going to be Ugonna Onyenso's decision to make. And it's a really crappy reality, and one that I said that I'd kind of get into the nuts and bolts after this decision was made, assuming it went the way that I was expecting, unfortunately. And so now here we are. We get to talk about the really crappy reality that is guys that are like Ugonna Onyenso, that are basically being told what to do, where to go, when to play, how they're playing, all of those things. It's in the hands of other people. They have no say in the matter. They have no choice. Ugonna had all of this stuff, very innocently saying all these things, not knowing that people were speaking on his behalf, talking to people through back channels and other schools and stuff. And that's the kind of the crappy reality of college basketball nowadays. Ugonna and his people requested transfer paperwork last Thursday night, and Kentucky basically spent the entire weekend trying to talk them out of it and try to find new paths to them being happy, whether that be through NIL, whether that be through, what are you expecting with roll? There's a reason why Cal went out of his way so often to say, I think he's going to be the best center in college basketball next year. I think that he's going to, we're going to be able to play him alongside Aaron Bradshaw, and they complement each other very well. He was saying all of these things knowing that there was some shady business going on, and that it's going to take some persuading with people outside of Ugonna himself. And that's the reality of the beast that is handlers and the ugly side of college basketball. The Kentucky spent the entire weekend trying to talk NIL and all that, and the demands, unfortunately, were just absolutely astronomical and made zero sense for Kentucky, and not something that Kentucky's ever going to stoop to. And we'll get into that after this, but it got to the point where Kentucky said, "All right, this situation is what it is, and we'd love to have you back, but we're not going to meet demands of people outside of our inner circle." And now he has hit the transfer portal, and it's now fair game for the schools in the Big East that were illegally talking to him and the people around him, and to begin with through back channels. Now they can legally talk to him. So congratulations to those guys.
Yeah, my thing is, he never really had too much production. He showed some flashes and stuff throughout his freshman year, and had a couple of decent games against some of the lower tier opponents. I remember he got in the game against Michigan, where Hunter Dickinson just kind of, and we'll obviously probably talk about him in a moment, kind of just bullied his way through him. Ugonna didn't really do anything, I think, in his freshman year to justify some of the, or lack of better terms, the demands, I guess, that he was trying, or that the handlers were trying to push out there. I think he's obviously got a lot of strengths and talents, but there's nothing he's really shown. And, I guess you can fault Cal for that, for maybe not playing him, but he didn't really show much or enough to warrant some of the things that maybe he would have thought he deserved. And I think we should also take into account that he reclassified. He was supposed to be a 22 kid. So this is technically, he's supposed to be going into his freshman year right now. So the fact that some of his handlers, I guess, maybe thought that he was still behind schedule playing, as the third big at Kentucky, where he was still supposed to be a high school senior. So some things just don't kind of add up in my mind of what they were thinking in that regard. The handler business can be some grimy, dirty stuff. So I don't really want to know exactly what's going on, I guess. It's probably better if none of us do. But just in general, I don't know if there was enough production that we saw from him to even justify any of that stuff. And, from my perspective, I'm not sure that, as you said, Kentucky was like, we're not going to go down that path. I wouldn't have even entertained, as long as whatever or even a quarter of what they were trying to go after, because Ugonna's just, I don't think he's worth all of that right now. You've got Aaron Bradshaw coming in, who's probably already better than him, or at least, maybe with the skill set that they're trying to look for at Kentucky, and, like what they want to play. So I think there's already pieces that I think he'll be a guy that they can replace, not necessarily easily, but I think you're going to get a guy in the portal that's already going to have more proven production. Might not be a guy that has the biggest ceiling as a guy like Ugonna, who can probably be like an NBA rim protector. But you're going to have a guy who will probably, be a better productive or more productive guy in Ugonna's role next year at Kentucky, no matter who you get. So,
and I guess I should add, he made six figures this year legally the right way. Like, Kentucky has done a bang up job at getting these kids money and setting up opportunities. Jacob Toppin being the face of college basketball during March Madness with the AT&T commercial. Chris Livingston getting the beats. There was a layup from Clutch and the connection with LeBron and all that stuff. But the Kentucky platform works, and they don't have to stoop to unbelievable, ludicrous offers and demands from handlers and agents and guys. I mean, look, and it's not just Ugonna. There are other guys on this roster that are dealing with that Kentucky's dealing with right now with demands that are like, do you understand who you are and what you're talking, like who you're talking to, and being totally frank, the salary that the head coach makes, and you're asking for a pretty substantial portion of that to play 1 year at the University of Kentucky? Kick rocks. Like, no, come on, man. Like, Kentucky has done everything in its power and utilized every resource possible to get money in these kids' pockets the right way. You don't need, these side agents that are putting out absolutely ridiculous numbers to get, the Baylor Shireman and Nigel Pack and guys like that are getting these astronomical deals. Yeah, it works for them. And unfortunately, it's kind of there's kind of a worst case scenario for those circumstances, because those are really, really good teams already. They kind of sold out to get those last final pieces, and they went on runs. So now up and coming agents and guys that are thinking that they're going to cash out on these kids, they're using that example to kind of dangle like a carrot in front of these other schools, saying, well, we saw what happened. If you actually pay up for NIL, you're going to go on a run like Creighton did. You're going to go on a run like Miami did. That's all well and good, but that's not real life money. That's not what everybody else is making in the grand scheme of things. There are high profile guys that you would think, guys at Duke, guys at Oregon, guys that have big money Nike schools, that you would think are making more money than they actually are, and it's tens of thousands of dollars. When Kentucky has guys like Ugonna Onyenso making six figures and Antonio Reeves making six figures this past year. Kentucky is doing a bang up job with salary, with NIL. And for guys like Ugonna and the people around him to go in and expect and just basically say, well, forget all of the stuff we've been doing the right way the first time around. We expect 10 times that and things like that. It's like, come on, man. You are so unbelievably unrealistic. And unfortunately, Kentucky is seeing the negative underbelly of college basketball right now. And it's gross. Just being totally frank, it's gross.
Well, I mean, one of the unintended consequences of being really good at NIL and, kind of being able to offer all these kids all that money is it makes someone like Uganna's camps think that, well, if they're just dishing out money, Uganna's got to go get his. He should be able to get his. If Calipari is going to preach him as this, the second coming of whatever, Willie Cauley-Stein on the back line or whatever, then you've got to, then obviously Kentucky's going to be willing to pay him and stuff like that. But the reality is there's really only the top so many percentage of kids that are getting money like that. And you've got to, like Antonio Reeves was, he has a chance to make a bunch of money coming back this year. And he was, one of the better scorers that Calipari's ever had. So that's how you get all that type of money is you had to, just have to be productive. And Kentucky's not going to promise, all that money to a kid who averaged, I don't care what his per 40 numbers were, because those are garbage. Those don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, because he was playing against terrible competition in the limited roles at the beginning of the season. So that stuff just doesn't translate. Like I've said before, I think you can get a guy like, I'll just use Khalil Ware as an example. Like you can get a guy like him to replace, and that's, in my opinion, that would be better than having Ugonna, at least for just if you're doing a 1 year sample size type deal.
Yeah, and it appears that I'm getting my phone's blowing up with these like weather alerts right now saying that we're about to get hit with like 70-mile-an-hour storms or whatever. So this show may just crap the bed at any given point, but at this point, you know what? Whatever.
Hasn't hit me yet, so hopefully we're all good to hear in Lexington at least.
We'll make it work. But yeah, Ugonna is not irreplaceable. There are other guys that we've talked about Kelly Ware on this show and the value that he would bring, especially the ceiling. They both have similar ceilings in terms of they contribute differently, but those are kind of the low production, high potential guys that if you could kind of pry that out of them and unlock that potential next year, they're both home run threats. Like wherever Ugo goes, and I've heard, as I've said on the show several times, Big East schools are interested. UConn, St. John's, Georgetown, a lot of those schools have been prying and making it very clear that they're interested without publicly admitting that they're interested, going through back channels and what have you. I lost my train of thought completely, but
well, Ugo, just on that note, like what type of guy is Ugonna even going to be next year? What type of player is he going to be? Like, is he in the mold of a guy like I think Jamarion Sharp, I believe was his name, the kid from WKU who also went to the transfer portal. Like, is that the type of guy that Uganna's going to be? Because if so, that's like a top end player in a mid-major conference. So you got to weigh the possibility that he's not going to be that great. And I don't know if people want to hear that, but I think that's part of the thinking too, is, how good is this guy actually going to be? Because they still haven't seen too much. I know you can talk about how good he's been in practice or whatever, how good Callie thinks he's going to be. But at the end of the day, they're going to need some production from that spot, especially if they do lose Oscar, if Oscar ends up transferring or not transferring, but going to the NBA. And then you've got Damian Collins end up transferring as well. Like, that's why it would be good to have Ugonna. But if you could go out and get a guy like Khalil Ware or even shoot Hunter Dickinson, if we want to take it that route, like that's probably just going to give Kentucky a better chance in the long run anyways.
Yeah, and I guess that I remembered what the point I was trying to make. Just the high ceiling guys. Ugo's going to go to wherever he wants in the Big East, and I think he's going to be productive. We just saw Bryce Hopkins do the exact same thing at Providence, and I get that. But if you bring in a guy like Kello Ware, you could probably reap similar rewards there. Where you got to pry. It's not going to be they're both kind of project bigs. But if you go out and get that, I do think that would work in Kentucky's favor. And I know that they're interested in the money is there for Kentucky, like substantially more than he would make he'd make substantially more at Kentucky than he did at Oregon this past year. So I think they have the pitch ready to go in terms of legal NIL and things that would make a lot of sense for him and something that he would like personally. So I do think that's one to keep an eye on. And we're now to that point where Ugo is gone. Damian Collins, there are a couple comments in the in our chat asking about if this changes if anything changes with Damian Collins with this decision. It is not. There was some speculation and that it might be kind of trending in the opposite direction, but I was told this afternoon that nothing has changed. Damian is very, very much likely and expected to hit the transfer portal. Unfortunately, his is not a dirty, grimy game. His was a just pretty damn terrible luck, and I feel sick for him that he even is in this position, but he's very much expected to hit the portal. So you have those two gone. You got to get bodies at this point. Like, you got to go and get some dudes that are going to fill out this roster. You can't just rely on Lance Ware and Aaron Bradshaw to be your front court. Like, you got to go get some dudes. And that's why they have set up this meeting with Hunter Dickinson, and why they have started these conversations with Kello Ware and other guys in the portal, because it's now time. You got to start zeroing in on guys and pick your poison in the portal. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent. If you want upside with guys with like Kello Ware, or if you want current production, they're going to come in and put up numbers like Hunter Dickinson. Those guys are now available to you, and that's why these conversations are ongoing. So, Zach, I guess my question for you, Hunter Dickinson now in active conversations with Kentucky. What do you make of that? I have some thoughts about just kind of where things stand there and all that, but just from a pure talent perspective and a guy that you'd be bringing in, what do you think of that fit potentially?
I mean, if you're just starting from nothing and you're kind of building a team around Hunter Dickinson, that's probably not a bad place to start for most college teams. I think most coaches in the country would take that. But I've talked about this on the KS board before. Plug. He's not like one-to-one similar comparison to Oscar, but he's kind of in a similar mold of like a back to the basket type big. Like, I know that Hunter is a better passer. He can stretch the floor a little bit more. He's got nice like block stats and stuff, but he's not exactly your send him out to defend a three or something, or put him in the pick and rolls and let him try and defend that way. Like, he's kind of a similar guy where he's going to work best where he's kind of roaming around in the middle on both ends of the floor. And I think with what Kentucky coming in, like, they just don't like. There's a reason that everyone has kind of come to this conclusion that Oscar is done here at Kentucky, because that style of play has kind of run its course here. Cal might prove us all wrong and trot out 2 7-footers next year, to try something like if that or whatever he wants to do there. But with Hunter Dickinson, I'm not sure that he's a ceiling raiser for Kentucky. I get why he's a floor raiser. I certainly understand that, because you're probably going to have a similar type deal with Oscar, where you're going to be able to win a lot of games, be a really high seed team, or top 5 seed or whatever, like they've been the last couple of years. But basketball is still not trending that way, and it's not going to change just because Hunter Dickinson shot 35% on 1-3 a game for one season. Like, it's got to be a little bit more than that. I need to see more than that, and I do think he's a much better passer, and that would really honestly change things a lot, because Oscar was, as we saw, like, he did get a little bit better as the year got on, but he was just not good at that area, and that'll help things a lot. But if you got guys like DJ and Justin and these freshmen that want to come in and they want to have an open lane and get in there and try and slice right through, like we've seen DJ just time and time again do whatever he can to get to the rim, it's gonna be a hell of a lot harder when he's been doing that in high school, he's been having Aaron Bradshaw out there who can sit on the wing and kind of wait for a three. Hunter Dickinson is not going to be doing that nearly as often. He's going to be wanting to kind of plant himself inside, maybe do the face-up jumpers. He's just not a guy that you can rely on to hit 3 or 4 threes a game and really, really stretch the floor like you need. I do think that if you bring in Hunter, the team's still going to be really good. Kentucky would be, probably one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the SEC, and he'd probably be an all SEC type performer. But I think you're going to run into the exact same thing that we've seen the last 2 years, where teams could just pinpoint him, exploit him a little bit too much for anyone's comfort, and it's going to get exposed in the tournament as it has the last 2 years. So I don't think he raises. I think he raises the offensive floor. I don't really think he raises the defensive floor, and I don't think he does anything for the ceiling on either end.
While we're talking about skill sets, a quick message from our friends at myperfectfranchise.net and Andy Ludicky, a franchise consulting company that helps others find franchises that will fit their needs, skill sets, investment requirements, and time commitment constraints. You might have seen Andy's name on KSR before, as he sponsors some of our recruiting coverage. Andy is super nice, great to chat with, and we are very excited to continue our partnership with him. Andy is an experienced entrepreneur and has been helping others go through the same process that changed his life 10 plus years ago. If you are wanting to find a way out of corporate America or a way to diversify, please reach out to Andy, as he's got a ton of knowledge in this world. And best of all, his services are 100% free to you. Always, nothing ventured, nothing gained. You can learn more and contact Andy anytime at www.myperfectfranchise.net or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. I guess I will say, talking early conversations with Kentucky and how those are going and how they kind of came about. So the initial word that I actually got from Kentucky when Hunter first hit the portal was, quote, "hell no," on Hunter. So I didn't even really register this as a real option for Kentucky. And then I think a lot of that had to do with Cal doesn't like being the first school associated with any kid. Like, he doesn't like to be that kid's a guaranteed lock to Kentucky. He likes to work in silence and kind of zero in on guys because, from his own personal leverage standpoint, you don't want to get involved with, this guy is a guaranteed lock to go to Kentucky. So guys kind of recruiting against Cal and things like that. You kind of want to work underneath and just let things happen organically. I think that's kind of what's been happening with Kellel Ware. There's a reason why all of the lists that he's been putting out, he hasn't been including Kentucky. And I think there's a reason for that. But Hunter was kind of a similar situation, but they kind of just connected the dots. He visited Kentucky back in high school, took an unofficial there, which unofficial, you got to be pretty interested in a school to pay your own way to go there. So he likes Kentucky. But I guess, just talking to people today, there's just some concern about this just being a leverage move for him to drum up more NIL money elsewhere, whether that be at Maryland, who just hired his former high school coach, connections to the DMV where he's from. There's a lot of buzz about Maryland right now. And there's some people that know way more than me about all this that believe that Kentucky has kind of been thrown in the mix in a way to say, well, Kentucky is offering, but more so saying, we were able to get X number of dollars for this guy this past year. So you could, in an ideal world, make similar money with NIL with us this year. Those kind of conversations to go back to Maryland and other schools that are recruiting him, Georgetown, guys like that, and say, well, this is what we're going to get from Kentucky. What do you got for us? So there's some concern about that and the connection there. There's also a connection with Duke. He wanted to be at Duke out of high school. That was kind of his dream school, the place that he really wanted to be. Duke picked Mark Williams back at that time. And I think there's some talk that now they could kind of, Duke's going to be looking for a big front court piece. And he's clearly fits that mold and would definitely fit at Duke, I think, just maybe stereotypically just who Hunter Dickinson looks like and what he is as just the type style of play and all that. I see the fit completely. I see the fit completely. But there's some Duke buzz kind of brewing a little bit with Maryland, has been there for a minute now. So I guess it's kind of the risk reward. Do you want to push all your chips in on Hunter Dickinson, knowing that it could just be a leverage move? Are they just going to use these conversations and go straight to another school and say, well, up your offer. That's the confusion right now, and the what Kentucky's dealing with. There's a lot of talk about Duke right now. I will put that out there, but Kentucky is going to cautiously move forward with him and see how the conversation goes, because it's worth the phone call, I think.
Well, so can you tell me more about that first unofficial visit? I guess that would have been what, 4 years ago now. You know, like was he obviously, if you pay your way to go, you have some interest, but you know, was Kentucky seriously looking at him? Was like how serious was it back then?
It never. Kentucky was one of the early schools that, he liked Kentucky a lot. Duke was kind of the school that he really wanted to go to, but Kentucky was, the blue blood. He wanted to be part of the blue blood experience, and he saw the fit. I can't remember in that same recruiting class who they decided to go after instead and who they signed at the center position. If it was
19, I think.
Was it 19?
The 19 class.
So that would be,
God, dude.
Put me
the
on
one
the
before
spot.
the COVID year. The team before the COVID year. So that would have been like EJ Montgomery, maybe.
Was it that far? Was it that long ago?
I don't know. I can look it up real quick if you want to riff for a second.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, so there's interest there, but they're also keeping, making sure it's clear that they're cautiously moving forward with this. They like him, and they like the game. They didn't like being immediately associated with Kentucky for prior connections, so I think they kind of wanted to distance themselves before kind of slowly circling back with them. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. The conversation did happen, but they're not going to get burned on this. I guess they understand that the buzz of leverage is out there, and they are not. They're not going to get burned with this. So I would definitely.
Class, by the way,
it was a 2020 class.
2020. So I guess that would have been Isaiah Jackson, right? Yeah, Isaiah Jackson and Lance Ware were Kentucky's bigs from that class. But Isaiah Jackson
was very good.
Yeah. Isaiah Jackson was pretty good, so
he was. It ended up being a win. Anyway, I mean, that won't be why, one unofficial visit back in 2019, 2020 isn't going to be the reason why he ends up here now. But there are prior connections, and it does add up. So I'm not wanting to go all in with Hunter, knowing that they are not going all in on Hunter yet. We'll see. It's kind of a wait and see game with them, but it's not wait and see in terms of you got to go get somebody. Like, at least these conversations are starting. Like, it doesn't have to be Hunter. A lot of people, guys that know basketball infinitely more than me, believe that Hunter Dickinson at Kentucky is a great fit and think that he would work well alongside what Kentucky already has coming in. And they kind of like the finesse back and forth between Aaron Bradshaw and Hunter Dickinson. So I trust their word. I'm not a huge fan of it, but there are other people that know way more than me that do love the fit. So I don't know. We'll see. I am much more intrigued by Kellel, where if you can unlock that potential there, that's the one that I think you could really hit a home run on alongside Aaron Bradshaw.
I think there's just a lot of just bad taste from the postseason lack of success over the last 2 years, where your best player is kind of a big guy center who, for more or less, kind of likes to plant himself near or around the basket type. I think that's just where, at least for me personally, that's where my hesitation with picking Hunter. And like I said, I've said multiple times already that I think he's a better passer and shooter. And I think that if Oscar was a better passer, I think Kentucky's offense is just infinitely more smooth and just works better because so many double teams get, if you face 15, 20 double teams a game, you got to know how to be able to pass the ball out of there. And Hunter Dickinson does. And that just opens things up for everyone else. So I do see a world where it obviously fits, but I think the defensive end is where Kentucky needs to get back to being.
Absolutely.
That's where they need to be, the early Cal teams, where they're just one of the better defensive teams in the entire country. And I don't think Hunter Dickinson helps you with that at all.
And that's my concern, because on paper, DJ Wagner, he's a dog. He's going to get after you defensively. He's going to guard you 94 feet, but he's not a true on-ball specialist. Like he's going to get beat off the dribble. Like he's going to have his concerns in that regard. Justin Edwards is a great off-ball defender. He's kind of like in that Cason Wallace mold where everybody loves Cason, because he gets the highlights, he gets the deflections, he gets transition buckets the other way because of steals that he initiates and gets the chase down blocks and all the highlight reel stuff. But he did get exposed at times, and I think a big part of it was because of the injuries and the just wear and tear on his body. But he kind of got exposed a little bit as an on-ball defender. Very similar complaints about Justin Edwards, that he'll get beat off the dribble, but he's going to make up for it with the highlight deflections and the transition steal and scores and all those. So that's Reed Shepherd kind of got exposed in the same way at McDonald's game. Not great on ball and will get beat off the dribble, but he's going to get some deflections. He's going to get some blocks and some steals and all that. So I have my gripes about Aaron Bradshaw. I know that's like literally the thing that in Cal's press release when they signed Aaron Bradshaw, he said he has all of the physical tools of an elite rim protector. I disagree. I mean, he has the physical tools, but the timing and the body mechanics to be that, I think he struggles in that regard. I think he swipes and flails his arm a little bit. Just really doesn't have great body control to be a truly polished elite rim protector. Point being, we're going through all these guys. Kentucky doesn't have that guy. You gotta get a surefire home run defender in the portal, and that's clearly not Hunter Dickinson. It could be potentially with Kellel Ware. It could be potentially, but Hunter Dickinson is the anti-version of that, and you're actively killing the floor of this team long term on that end of the floor, especially if you kind of zero in on Hunter and say, all right, that's our guy. So you got to go get a home run, and at least perimeter defender, you got to have one lockdown guy, whether it's the elite rim specialist or the on-ball defender, because that guy does not exist on the roster right now.
Yeah, and if you're sticking to that note, you got to have someone like Antonio Reeves has to just get better at defense in general. And then, if they do bring in another guard, you've got to get a guy who's probably a little bit taller than someone like DJ and Rob, because they're both about 6'1", 6'2", a little bit undersized.
Don't even get me started on Rob.
Yeah, especially on the defensive end there. So they're going to need to just. I think that's really where the portal is, where they're going to have to stack up, is try and get a solid wing defender that can maybe work alongside Justin or help out with some of the guards, because like you said, Rob and DJ are the same boat where they're going to struggle to guard bigger guards. And I think one of DJ's strengths on offense is the fact that he's, so strong without looking strong. Like he's just capable of doing that. I don't know how that'll translate against college level guards on defense. Like if he can still be that big, gritty guy who can push him back, the dog, if you will. So that's why if you are going to run with guys like DJ and Rob, you need a really, really good rim protector, because there's going to be, you need the fail safe or whatever, where, the break in case of emergency type guy. Like Justin Edwards is probably going to get beat, but he's also going to be good enough to recover and still get there. But unless Aaron is going to be, they're like deterring guys to the point where opposing teams don't even really want to shoot or get close to the rim, like that's going to complicate things out on the perimeter there. So yeah, it's now that I'm saying it, feels like there's a lot more needs in the portal than that Kentucky needs than I maybe initially thought, because I feel like they probably need at least 3 pieces in the portal, especially with just some of the departures coming. And I think a lot of it depends too on how much people think Reed's going to play. I don't think Reed's going to play that much, honestly, his freshman year still, even like in the 8 to 10 minute range or whatever. So yeah, he's not really someone I'm going to count on to be that guy. And like you said, he's a good team defender. He's like a good connector on that end. But in terms of on-ball defense, he will, if there's like some junior SEC point guard that's against him, like in the middle of January, that kid's going to torch Reed every single time. So
Clark Townsend says people think because Maryland hired Dickinson's high school coach as an assistant, he is going there. That isn't true. Maryland insiders say there's no package deal. Jones wasn't hired to get Hunter. Didn't Louisville say the exact same thing when they hired Milt Wagner? That was, it was just because he's a legacy guy. I'm here to tell you that it is undoubtedly a move to at least put yourself in position to get Hunter Dickinson. I don't know what to tell you, but yes, it absolutely is at least part of the reason why he got that job is he's a bang up recruiter. Like, he's very good at his job and he's deserving of it. But the timing of it and how it all unfolded, the way it unfolded, it is absolutely a way to at least put yourself in position to land a guy like Hunter Dickinson. I don't know what to tell you. If you believe otherwise, they can say whatever they want. But yeah, it's
if you're Ed Cooley, too at Georgetown, I think you got to say you got to try and go in on all, like, you got to scrape all your NIL money together, and you got to throw everything you can at that kid, because he's not going to get Oscar money at UK. Like, they're not going to give him anything close to that. Or if they would, I think that would be kind of ridiculous, because Oscar got his money really on the relationship he built with the fans over the year and a half before then. Hunter Dickinson had a whole thing with Lance Ware on Twitter, before, where he was like, I think it was Lance Ware, right? Where he was like, oh, Cal's ducking us for,
yes,
because they had to move the Michigan game. I think it was with Lance that he was tweeting about. So, like, he's just not going to get the money here that he would. I think Georgetown's a place that could pull it all together, especially with all their boosters probably being pissed about how poorly they've been for the last decade. If you want to go make a splash, you go get Hunter Dickinson. So I think there's going to be just a lot more teams out there that would be willing to pay more than Kentucky would for a guy like him, if we're talking NIL money.
Yeah. So it will be very interesting. In terms of any other decision updates, not any I guess since the last time we did the show, Antonio Reeves officially put his name in the NBA draft. Everything that we've said and was to be expected. No shock there. What are you hoping to, or I guess expecting to hear from the feedback that Reeves is going to get going through that process?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on it on the last one, the last source say I was on. I don't think he'll get what he's looking for. I think he could easily find his way into the G League and just play his way through there, but he'd make more money in NIL at Kentucky. And if he can come back and do what Emmanuel quickly did and just become more sound on defense and just round out his game overall, I think there's absolutely a spot for him in the NBA at the next level. Like, I think Jacob Toppin has a much better chance of sneaking his way into the second round for a multitude of factors that just Reeves doesn't really have. And just even having a brother in the NBA like Obi, people might not think that matters, but it does, because there's name recognition there. And Jacob has, he's got multiple years at Kentucky. He's got the frame, the size, the body to that just impresses scouts. He's a really good personality. People like to be around him. He's very open about himself. He'll tell you how he feels, what he wants. And NBA teams take all that stuff into account, and not to Reeves' fault, but he's just a little bit more quiet guy. It's different from being at Illinois State for 3 years and then come to Kentucky. He's obviously still trying to figure out how to play at a high level like this. And that's why I think it's definitely just, I would assume that the reason Reeves did that was almost 95% just to say, how do I put myself in position to be a second round pick next year? What do I need to do that? You NBA personnel, tell me what I need to do, and then I'll come back to Kentucky and I'll do it. I think that would be more or less what they would try or if I was Reeves, I think that's probably what I would try and do. Obviously I'm not nearly as good of a basketball player. So I don't know. That's just how I would see the Reeves situation playing out.
And I will say, and I've said this on here before, Reeves wants to go pro. If the right opportunity presented itself for him, that's his goal. I mean, he's 22 years old. He's been in college 4 years. If a team offered him a two-way contract, he would go. It just wouldn't make any financial sense for him to explore that option, knowing that there are 300 people fighting for 58 spots, and Reeves doesn't. He's an elite scorer and microwave scorer, and those guys have made it in the league. Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford, those types of dynamic scorers off the bench. There is a blueprint for a guy like Antonio Reeves to make it, but
and the NBA loves those type of guys too. They love guys like Reeves who can just go up and down the court. They have no hesitation. They just want to shoot as much as they want. They don't care if they go 1 for 15 in a big game. They just want them to keep shooting. And that's what Reeves does, to his credit. And he still had really good, he's got shooting splits that the NBA guys will love. but it's just kind of all the other stuff I think that will drag him down.
Yeah, there wasn't a single person I talked to down at McDonald's. The NBA scouts were, I mean, lining the gym, and not a single one that I talked to even discussed the possibility of him being drafted as realistic, or even, I mean, even when two-way contract was discussed, I mean, they were like, there are so many other guys out there that are NBA ready that we're going to be offering those guys and not think twice about over a guy like Antonio Reeves, who does really, really good things at this level. And, and that's not to go against it, because I do think that there is an NBA future for him. He's got to lock in defensively. He has to show more growth in that area. And consistency is the name of the game. He stepped in and thrived in his role this season at Kentucky, but there's a lot more that goes into it. And it's going to be, I think, one more year. It sucks that he's 22 years old. And I know he'd like to get things started right now, but it would make so much sense for him financially in terms of development and who he could be as a basketball player and branding. I mean, goodness, if he comes back and is the face of one of the faces of the team, he came in this year from Illinois State, not even remotely close to being a face of the program, and kind of built his way into being that by year's end. Imagine a full off season of that, a full, preseason, all that stuff with NIL. He's going to make a fortune. I think it just make no sense for him financially, unless he's just dying to get the hell out of here and go pro. It would just not be financially beneficial for him to go.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I had another point I wanted to make about Reeves, but I kind of forgot about it. So unless it comes back up, my kitten's playing around here.
So yeah, I don't think anything has changed. I still think Kentucky feels really good about that chance. I guess
my thing is, he's 22, which I get. You want to try and get in the NBA as fast as possible at that point. But for a guy like him, the difference between being 22 and 23 going to the NBA really isn't that big of a deal. I think
you're already old.
Yeah. It's a difference if it's like you're 18 or 19 versus 21, 22, 23. Like that's when, if you're already been in the league or in college this long, like the kid was at Illinois straight for 3 years. Did he really think that he was going to come to Kentucky and then the next year he was going to be an NBA draft pick? I mean, maybe in the back of his mind, he maybe thought about it a little bit, but it's not like the kid was on, draft boards after his junior year at Illinois State. So, that's a whole different point there, I guess. But
yeah, we'll see. I don't think anything has changed in that regard. The process is just getting started with him, and NBA scouts expect him to receive feedback that indicates that he needs to go back to Kentucky, and that'd be huge. You got to get that back. Nothing has changed with Livingston. I was told that the expectation is for Oscar to test the waters this week at some point. That's going to come out. I know I brought up the possibility of him hitting the transfer portal. Kentucky remains very skeptical that ever happens, but I am here to tell you that it has been discussed on Oscar's side, and not Oscar specifically, but those around him that are, trying to, understanding that he's a superstar celebrity status guy at the college basketball level, and understand that if there was one guy in this sport that could cash out with NIL at a different school, it's Oscar Tshiebwe. I mean, he's a National Player of the Year. He's a great personality, has, checks all of the boxes that you're looking for a face of your program. There would be suitors for him, and people would be willing to offer him a lot of money. So it has been discussed, but Oscar wants to go pro, and Kentucky expects him to go pro. And that's my personal expectation as well. But I just, making it clear that, as we just saw with Ugonna Onyenso, sometimes when outside voices get inside, that things get complicated. But the expectation is that Oscar goes pro, and all of these things being said, you got to go get bodies with bigs, man. Like, I mean, we are now at not danger zone, but to the point where it's like, all right, you got to get somebody. Like, you can't let other big name Kentucky level talents will hit the portal, but you can't just miss all of them. You don't have to make them all, but you can't miss them all, Zach.
Can't miss them all.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
So yeah, and Travis Henderson says, is Dillingham going to be eligible to play? Kentucky still says that he's going to be eligible, and I will say, because we didn't get to address this last time, I got a text yesterday morning from somebody that worked out with him at OTE 2 nights ago, I guess. So Monday night, they worked out with him. So that he looked amazing. Like, said that he was in shape, that he looked good. He was knocking down shots. There's a lot of speculation about how often he's in the gym and what his work ethic looks like and those sorts of things. There's a chart in the Overtime Elite gym that indicates who has been in the gym. It's like an accountability board, if you will, where the top of the list, it's like Amen Thompson, top 5 draft pick, has taken 5,000 jump shots this week. His brother Asar has taken 4,700 jump shots. And then you go down the list and it's everybody. I mean, just hundreds upon hundreds, thousands upon thousands. And then at the very bottom of the list was Rob Dillingham. 0 next to his name. It's not a good look, but it is a good thing to hear that he is in the gym and people have actually seen him in there. And Kentucky's confident. They're excited about the chance to mold him, kind of the piece of clay that is Rob Dillingham, into what could be an absolute dynamite basketball player. I mean, in terms of entertainment and all of the offensive values that you bring, the quickness, the shiftiness, the way he just kind of has the ball on a string, unbelievable in that regard as a playmaker and just surefire entertainer. Like, he has the makings of a college basketball star. And the quote that I got from the guy that was working out with him, that said that he has a chance to be the best of all of Kentucky's recruits, just because the upside is just so unbelievably high. But Kentucky's, there's stuff to work with there, and it's going to be a process, and we've addressed those head on, and Kentucky remains confident. So until that changes on their end, Overtime still saying all the right things and all that. National basketball people that I trust remain skeptical and have their concerns, but still nothing of substance to say, well, there's no chance that he's going to make it on campus, or we should just stop assuming he's going to make it. Like, it's okay to kind of be cautiously optimistic and have your concerns while still being excited, I guess is the best way to put it. Because I personally am very excited for the Rob Dillingham experience. And I know you are.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be experience. And obviously if he gets to Kentucky, I'm going to be cheering for him and hoping he does his best and all that. And I think if you're a Kentucky fan trying to figure out, what exactly you might be getting, go watch Jordan Poole play for the Warriors. Yeah. And you will see pretty much a guy who just wants to shoot everything. He's going to take a lot of bad shots. He's going to have I don't know if attitude is the right word, but he's got a personality to him.
Yeah, got some swagger to him.
That's a good way to put it. He's got a lot of swagger to him. He's going to talk a lot of crap, and he's going to go up and down the court. He's going to take some really tough shots, do a lot of weird kind of do-si-do type spin moves that might not seem like they're really going anywhere. But he's going to make highlight plays, and he's going to score buckets, like just loads of buckets if he does get to Kentucky. So I think that obviously you want him to get here. I think if you're Kentucky, especially because you just mentioned the lack of bodies thing, like you're almost getting to the point where you can't afford to lose any of these freshmen, because then that's just another hole you've got to fill in the portal. And I'd almost rather just have Robert Dillingham and DJ and let Cal try and figure those guys out, as opposed to some third year, OVC guard or whatever the case may be there. So there's always going to be a Rob Dillingham conversation. That's for sure.
I'm very excited. I believe our first chance to see him at Kentucky will be in July, this trip to Toronto. I got a DM that, let me read this on there. I actually didn't get the chance to read it as it was happening, but I think it's pretty interesting. Hi, Jack. You're probably aware that the UK men's team is playing in Toronto this summer. In case you may not be aware of the schedule for the UK games, the Cats are playing against Germany on July 12th, Canada on July 13th, and Africa on July 15th. If the Cats do well, they would play in the championship game on July 17th. The games are being played inside of the building that used to be the Maple Leafs Garden, which is now being converted by a local university into small arena and other uses. The ticket prices are pretty good considering I don't know what that means, but yeah, so I guess we're looking for a mid-July trip to Toronto. What are you excited for to see with that one, seeing the Cats and start their exhibition tour against real competition this year?
The exact same thing that I was for the Bahamas. I'm just excited to watch them put it all together, and I hope that they. Honestly, I'd much rather them, build up the hopes again and have, maybe struggle out of the gate of the regular season as opposed to just sucking wind at this summer event. So I really hope that everything goes well. It'll be a great chance to really finally watch all these kids play together. I think you'll be able to see, I think Cal will let Reed get a lot of run. We'll be able to see Adu Fierro. That's the guy I'm really going to be interested to see what he develops and how he progresses between, gosh, I guess it'll only be 3 or 4 months at that point between the end of the season and whenever this happens.
So that's July. That's July. We're 3 months away from that right now. Kids, I think the players arrive on campus mid to late May. So, we're talking a month and a half of them being on campus, but also a month and a half from that point to them playing actual real life basketball games where, look, Kentucky will lose games in that event. Like even if in a best case scenario where Kentucky it looks way better than we expect them to, this is a tough event that Baylor lost.
This isn't the best college team in Canada they're playing or whatever that one team tried to pretend themselves as.
Yeah, no, this is it's going to be some real competition this year where it's guys actually competing, not 45-year-old hungover guys that have been at the craps table all night long the night before. Like, this is a real competition, and Kentucky will lose games, and it's a good thing that Kentucky's going to lose games. They're not going to learn anything by beating every team they play by 50 points. This is exactly what Kentucky needs. I'm really looking forward to that. Rob Dillingham especially. Like, man, it's going to be a blast to just be able to see what he is, see him in a Kentucky uniform, and, for the fans, embrace him. Like, just make it very clear to him that he is needed on this team and he's wanted, and everybody's excited to see him because it's going to be a blast to watch him play. So that's a guy that I'm personally excited about, and I know BBN will be as well. So I think they haven't announced any of the details. That random DM that I got was the first actual official outside of hey, this is our plans. We're going to be going to Toronto at some point. Can't wait to see you there. That's all I've had up to this point. And then Chin Coleman slip up on radio where he was clearly not supposed to say anything about it. And then just publicly, literally 5 minutes after Cal said, yeah, we're not going to release any details yet. Those are going to come out later. And Chin 5 minutes later was like, hell yeah, we're going to Toronto. You booked your flight yet? That was a whole experience in itself. But so this was the first real update I've gotten on that since then. So it looks like July 12th, 13th, 15th, and then 17th would be the championship game. So if you want to book your tickets, by all means, go on and do that. So I don't believe any other guys that Kentucky has reached out to or anything that jump out to you that we need to address. I don't believe so, but any last thoughts you got?
There's a bunch of, guards that they've had, contact with or whatever you want to say.
Big fan of Dalton Knecht, big fan of him. I know Kentucky has talked to him and have felt him out about what his expectations are. And I was told that he's going to take a minute to decide on what his plans are and where, what's next for him. He's not going to be one of those dudes that commit tomorrow or anything. So he's a guy that probably more so like Chris Livingston, CJ Frederick insurance, more so than Antonio Reeves insurance. But that's definitely a guy that on my personal wish list that I would love. I think he's a great fit and would definitely be kind of a plug and play guy for the Cats. So that big fan of him. Is there anybody else in the portal that you'd like to see Kentucky go all in on?
Kind of like the LJ Cryer kid from Baylor. I don't think Kentucky's kind of poked around, or at least the initial. They haven't done so much so far, but he was a guy that I kind of liked when I saw his name go in there. So. But honestly, not too much right now. I haven't done a deep dive, I guess is what I should say. But the Dalton kid and LJ Cryer, those are two that I've noticed immediately and really like the stats and what they put up and just highlight tapes and stuff. So,
well, we will see. The process is ramping up no matter what. Now is the time. We officially have our first sit down meeting with somebody. We've had reaching out, getting contact, all that. But we're here. We're finally getting into the nuts and bolts of the transfer portal, and I know we're all looking forward to it. So we'll be pumping out these shows however often, we just decided to do this one on a whim, on a random Wednesday afternoon, and rambled for an hour. So appreciate all of our listeners and comments. I think we gave like a 2-minute heads up that we were actually doing this show. So appreciate everybody jumping in. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments. So appreciate you guys as always. The feedback on the show has been awesome lately, and appreciate the continued support. Zach, we'll be back. I guess whenever the next big piece of news drops, we'll be doing this regularly. So
maybe an hour.
Yeah, be prepared for spur of the moment tweets and live shows on this YouTube page, because it will be coming as news comes. So appreciate, Zach, you joining me on short notice. Let's go on and get out of here. Where can fans find your work?
As always, they can find me at Kentucky Sports Radio. They can also find me on Twitter at Geoghegan, KSR. Geoghegan is Geoghegan. That is the triple G, not the fighter.
G? Is that a G, I think?
Yeah, G.
Anyway.
Sure.
G, right? Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
Find me on Twitter as well, at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Reach out to me via email, jpilgrim@KentuckySportsRadio.com. With that, we'll be back next time for the Jam Pack Sources podcast, hopefully more optimistic and happy things to talk about. We will see you then.